We begin tonight with the latest efforts to get children back in the classroom in Nigeria. 13 million youngsters are currently out of school. That's the highest number in the world. And it's because of the growing rate of kidnappings. But now a new initiative hopes to turn this around. Chinemerem Joseph tells us more.
Well, joining us now is Zainab Ahmed, Nigeria's finance minister. And right here in the studio is Chukwuemeka Nwajiuba, the Minister of State for Education. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on NewsNight. Let me begin with the Finance Minister. Of course, you organized this dialogue on financing safe schools. It seems to have had the right mix of stakeholders. But what do you think really is missing? Is it funding or what? Honorable Minister of Finance.
Good evening.
Good evening
to everyone. I hope you can hear me now. Good evening. Well, there are so many things that are missing. It's not just about security. It's also about development, underdevelopment. It's also about the confidence that we need to make sure is restored and remains, that parents send and leave their children in school. Security is a problem in several parts of the country, and it has reached a head when our children are not safe in schools anymore. And what this means, especially for some part of the country where development, where student enrollment is a problem, and where the staying of children in school is a problem, is that this is going to get worse. And it means that our development outcomes will become poorer unless we get up and do something about it. We have to secure our schools. Every child has a fundamental right to an education. They must be able to learn in an environment that is secure and safe. The teachers and the children have a right to be protected so that they can learn and come out and contribute to the society. If we don't do this, what it means is that we're going to hinder the development of our economy going forward. The growth that we seek to aspire, that should be stable and resilient and inclusive, will be a mirage if our children are not going to school. So that for me was the reason why we're leading this, because we know finance is at the center of it all. Without adequate financing and without a proper plan, we will not be able to reach that target of making sure that every child goes to school in a secure environment. The Ministry of Education is the anchor, is the lead implementing agency, but the Ministry of Finance is leading the planning process and the mobilization of resources.
Minister, let me come to the Honorable Minister of State, Dr. Nwajiuba here. It's a fantastic work that the Ministry of Finance has done in taking the lead in terms of this initiative because they hold the purse string for the nation. But in terms of the intelligence and the data and statistics that helps to drive this agenda, what is it the Ministry of Education has done that will make it possible for us to say in the next few months and next few years, we actually can achieve this in terms of statistics and data that you have that you can share with us?
Well, thank you very much. And like the Minister of Finance just pointed out, she's the convening, she has a convening institution because she's got the money. But more than that is that she has made this outreach towards the plan. Now, this is not a new plan. This is a government that met the Safe School Initiative of 2014 on ground. It went into some sort of hiatus because the money that was earmarked for that program actually came in and it was actually spent. And it was spent properly the way they had designed it at the time, because we had issues at Buni Yaji, we had issues at Mongono, we had issues in so many schools, and many of the students who were threatened at the time were then dispersed into the 43 federal colleges we have around northern Nigeria, and they were paid for and carried on for many years. So it's not now, but what she's going to do is to upscale it with a plan based on new and evolved issues that have arisen within them. Nigeria is a big country, geospatially so. And in 774 local governments in Nigeria, we have about 153,000 primary schools with nearly 28,000 secondary schools. However, so most of these are not owned by the federal government. The federal government does not own any primary school. All belong to states and private individuals, churches and institutions, all like. Now, originally, schools were, for instance, not built as a fenced-in compound. This never was the concept around schools earlier when schools were being built, especially in northern Nigeria, where there's a large expanse, and most places were quite spacious, and they had a lot. However, we've come to a point where each state, if you take a state and analyze them, you have to analyze a state by state. Adamawa State, and I keep giving, for instance, with 21 local governments, 105 districts, and nearly 380 secondary schools. Kaduna State alone, 500 secondary schools. And like the governor pointed out today, each of these states would make what we call an analysis of the threat posed in that locality. All threats are local because, yes, there is the global threat, which is the Nigerian threat, the insecurity, the corridor over Nigeria, this condom over Nigeria, there is some sort of insecurity. But you begin to particularize them. The kind of threat you see in Alimosho is not the kind of threat you will find in Edo State, any part of Edo State, or in Enugu, or in Owerri, or in Kaduna, or in Maiduguri, or in Zamfara. Okay. All of these, the threat components changes. And that is why all the security chiefs were gathered with us today. And at this summit, we are analyzing what needs to be deployed. The analysis had the gaps, the statistics had already been done. The Ministry of Interior and His Excellency Adegbeshola, through the Civil Defense it gave us their location-specific mapping for 67,000 primary schools without any sort of security presence at all, boots on the ground.
It's very, very challenging, and the peculiarities of the different states makes it even more complicated. Let's bring back the Finance Minister. Help us understand, Mrs. Minister, what are the key strategies that came out of this dialogue, and which would you say are the low-hanging fruits that you can actually attack immediately?
So this is a refreshing of an initiative that already exists. What we came out of this meeting of today is a commitment to draw up a national plan that will map out every school that we have in the country, identify the ones that are high risk, and clearly delineate which ones we need to put physical security on, which ones will require physical security, IT systems, and also education of the students about security, the teachers, the school-based management committees, the immediate community surrounding the school. So what we did today is a commitment for everyone, every party, state, local government communities to bring in input so that we can pull this national plan together. When we do that plan, we'll now be able to prioritize the plan, to cost it, and begin to mobilize resources so that we can put in place the commitments that have been made. The security agencies made their commitments to ensure that there's security in the schools. They called on communities to help them with intelligence, information. The state governments have already been doing a lot of work around securing their schools, and this process is going to help them to do more. We're going to identify different pockets of funding that can be deployed for this purpose, but it has to be in a manner that is systematic, that is designed, and that will achieve the results that we hope to come out with.
Let me just take you back a few years. When we look at 2014 and we look at the money that was gathered by this same initiative, which included the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Gordon Brown, the money was put together And from what the Minister of State has just explained to us now, it looks like, yes, the money was spent. But then how many of those children were actually taken back to school, and how many did we lose? Was anything done to confirm that that money spent was judiciously and justifiably spent to ensure that those kids, all of them, went back to school? Especially when we look at Chibok and Dapchi. And I guess Chibok was the real key to opening this door.
Incident that brought about the Safe Schools initiative. I recall that some of the children were recovered and some are not recovered. But of all the children that are recovered, and the kids that were abducted in Dapchi and returned, and other kids that have also been in similar circumstances abducted, all these children have been relocated to schools that are safer. The school fees are being paid. Some of them have graduated and are in university. So all of the children that are affected have been supported using this particular funds. Of course, there's still, unfortunately, some girls that are not yet recovered, the girls that were taken in Chibok. And part of this process is for us to examine how that first phase of this initiative was implemented, identify what has worked very well and what has not worked, so that in doing the new plan, we will be learning from the shortages or the shortfalls of the previous plan. But there are all indications that the monies were well spent. But during this process, we will include in our report how that money was utilized for consumption of the public.
Education Minister, well, the figures coming out from the Northeast are quite troubling, that only 20% of children in the Northeast who finish primary school can actually read, which means there's a challenge of the quality of education even before COVID, even before other economic situations that we find ourselves in. What are the strategies that you have in place as Ministry of Education to ensure not just the quality of, not just that these kids get back to school, but that you actually give them the right quality of education?
Well, again, Northeast is the largest part of Nigeria. By any stretch, it's a huge outlet. It's been battered by Boko Haram for upwards of 10 years. And it's always a difficult terrain. The biggest determinant of outcomes from schools actually is quality of teachers. And because of the problem of insecurity as well, a lot of teachers have not made the effort to move from the southern part of Nigeria to those places to go fill up some of the school spaces. We are encouraging this. We have now standardized teaching across the board. Teachers Registration Council, as at the end of 2019, this government decided that anybody without a teacher registration certificate cannot teach. You can't be in any of the classrooms. The governors are cooperating with us on all of this. And we had this small mix-up with COVID for 2020 and couldn't implement fully the way we wanted to deploy that. However, we've augmented this with technology because thanks to many of the governors in that region, especially Zulum and the governor in Yobe, Boni, and the governor in Gombe as well, Inua, they are all tuned in to the federal government's response. They are broadcasting knowledge to different parts, very remote areas, even up to in the IDP camps, providing them with learning equipment, skills and tools and everything to upscale what the teachers are doing. So really, a lot of work is being done to ameliorate what has happened in the past, where learning outcomes from those areas were not quite stellar. There's been a significant improvement with the intake, for instance, in the National Common Entrance that was conducted this year. Yobe State, for instance, for the first time, is able to, provide a sizable number. Okay. In fact, we had a huge jump from Zamfara State that moved to number 17 in the country. A lot of effort is being made at the moment for so that a lot of people can. So throughout the country, these are programs that are already running throughout the country, and we just want everybody to get on board. We are upscaling this so that everybody gets a chance to use this. The facilities that are created on the Federal Ministry of Education's website, because the ICT unit and the Federal Ministry of Education has done a complete broadcast for every matter on our curriculum and digitalized it in such a way that anybody, even when you don't have adequate teachers, can actually be on the same scale. You know, you don't
including children in the rural areas
who have the platforms to access this. So truly, the idea of delivering knowledge, yes, like you heard the private sector say today, Eswe Igadalo did mention that what the private sector will be participating with is enabling technology. Yes, the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, like Pantami, the minister there, has also said, all of us inclusive, we work towards a digital bridge divide, that everybody comes on board with some sort of platform. Power may be a factor in some remote areas, and access to internet.
I was just wondering, we're going to move on the conversation in just a minute, but I was just wondering, we just finished a special report and coverage of what happened in Chibok, and we had a reporter there, and the feedback we're getting is that there are still loads of places in Borno State that are not easily accessible because of the state of insecurity in those regions. What is happening to those children in those places?
Agreed. We have still some inaccessible parts where what the National Security Advisor would describe as ungoverned places or some undergoverned areas of Nigeria. And those places may pose some sort of risk. What has happened is that we've moved children and schools out of those places. Some merger has occurred. The Sokoto State government, for instance, described what he did in an analysis where you say, for instance, this is a boarding house and it's at risk. What do we then do? Do we close down the school? No. We merge it with a school that is a bit safer, relocate some of the children. Then if boarding system is a problem there and makes it attractive for a mass kidnapping, then you can then turn them into day schools. That's what we've done in some of these areas that are remote, very remote, not just Dikwa or Gamburu, as the case may be, or the other theaters of wherever there is such an inclement theater. We probably what we have done is move them and merge them with schools that are a bit more clement for learning.
Okay, I think we should bring in the Finance Minister, Zainab Ahmed, at this point. Thank you so much for staying with us. Well, you did say you seem to have re-echoed what the Minister of State for Education has said, that the $30 million that was initially set aside for the Safe Schools initiative was judiciously spent. Now, with this financing of, safe schools that you have just come up with the dialogue, and of course, hopefully you'll be getting a lot of funds, what are the systems you have in place to ensure that the rural kid is not left behind, and that the funds, when you do get them, will be, directed appropriately to the appropriate quarters?
So this time around, from the planning stage to implementation, we'll be using technology. We already have a project in the ministry that we call the Grid 3 project that has mapped, in partnership with Ministry of Education and also Ministry of Health, all schools and all primary healthcare centers. So we know where the schools are, and we know which ones, working with the state governments, will be able to identify the ones that are most at risk. There will be automation that we'll have to deploy. We'll have to use technology to make sure that the children are secure in the school and their movement in and out and around the schools are tracked. And on the side of the use of the funds, we have to use the automated platforms that we have already in managing funds. Funds that are used can be seen transparently by any stakeholder in Nigeria today. If you Google the Transparency portal under the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, you will see government expenditure, and you'll be able to trace who has initiated that expenditure, who is spending, and for what purpose it is being spent. So we have to use a platform like that to show on an ongoing basis the funds that are being used. We have to give comfort to donors that are indicating that they want to support us, that they can see how the funds are being used on an ongoing basis.
Let's still stay with you, Minister of Finance, but let me bring in this very, very quickly. I just want to bring this, of course, to you. It appears state governments are not ready to pay back the 1.5 trillion naira budget support facility that they actually received from the Central Bank of Nigeria, and that was in 2015. It comes as the governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Tambuwal, appealed to the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, and the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, not to begin deductions from their accounts yet.
Central Bank, I appeal to you to reconsider your positions on resumption of deductions of debts, states or either the Central Bank of Nigeria or Government of Nigeria is key and fundamental, because by the time you begin these deductions, it means that all of our incomes and revenues are going to go down. And these challenges are still with us. They have not left us. We are supporting the police. Our revenues are not IGR is dwindling because of COVID-19 and all of this. So I appeal that on behalf of the Nigerian governors, that the Federal Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank should reconsider their position and ensure that we remain strong in funding, so that we can continue to make sure that our schools are not only safe, secure, but we maintain our children in schools and their education continues.
Okay, so Honorable Minister, how do you react to that?
Well, so I was just saying that the states are not saying they're not going to pay the loans. In fact, we had started deducting the loans. We have deducted up to about 4 months or 6 or 7 months before COVID happened, and the states appealed for us to suspend the deduction. We sought Mr. President's approval, so it's one of the fiscal incentives to the state to enable them conserve their resources to use for responding adequately to the pandemic. The suspension was for 12 months, and this 12 months is over. So we've told them, if you don't want the deductions to start, it's okay, but you have to now apply. We have to go and get the necessary approvals, and we'll get another extension, maybe for 6 months or maximum another 12 months. Because I do understand that just as the federal government, the state government's economies are also picking up very, very gradually and slowly, and therefore they need all the resources that they have to be able to intervene, whether it is for security of our schools or improving the health of the people and protecting people from the impact of the COVID-19. So this is something that we can work out with the states, and once we get their application, we'll sort it out, and we are sure Mr. President will give the approval, and the Central Bank will also be informed that we have to stay the repayment for a period of time, depending on what is agreed upon.
Let me just very quickly then, we're coming back to that issue. There's something that just came up, and I wanted to ask the Minister of State for Education. A number of people have hinted at the fact that they just resonate on what you have said with regards the quality of education is dependent on the quality of teachers. What effort, who decides, first of all, in terms of the curriculum in schools today? And then in terms of the quality of teachers that we have, who can influence the quality of those teachers? Is it the federal government, Federal Ministry of Education, or is it down to the local government authority?
Well, it's a combination of everybody. It's a Nigerian situation, because we have the law in Nigeria that requires the teachers to be paid at a particular level. The federal government has taken a lot of measures currently. The president approved, the President Muhammad Buhari has just approved that teachers can stay in class till they're 65. They've increased that. We've thrown out a couple of incentives to make sure that better quality teachers are available in our class. All of that is being worked out and done within this administration. However, the project of hiring teachers at primary school level, at the basic level, that onus is still with local governments and states. And that's where we have some of the biggest challenges. Because I've toured almost every part of Nigeria. And I'm deeply concerned by the quality of the people on the payroll of state governments. And I've had the discussions with many of the governors. Okay. Many of them are continuously addressing it. And I always make reference to Kaduna State that agreed, and even the first part of his administration got rid of some teachers that were not actually adequate for the job.
Sorry, you're saying that no matter how illiterate and hopelessly so the teachers might be, it's out of the hands of the federal government.
The federal government has a teacher registration council of Nigeria. There are two parts of your question. One, it deals with curriculum, and one deals with teacher quality.
Teachers, yes.
And both of them combine to get learning outcomes.
Yes.
Now, curriculum is regulated by the federal government and the NERDC, the National Education Regulatory Development Commission. Professor Jinadu is at the head of that effort, and they've now brought out curriculums that have been upgraded from because they do this all the time.
Okay, let's quickly bring in the finance minister. Well, quickly, we have less than a minute. Help us understand exactly when the supplementary budget will be submitted for vaccine and other funding issues. Exactly when will that be? And of course, you have said the governors should look for ways to improve their IGR. Exactly how will they do that?
Well, on the supplementary budget, our target from the ministry is by the end of April, and this budget will be for the COVID-19 vaccination, or possibly also for some very key critical security equipment. Mr. President will get a report, and then it goes to FEC, and then we send a request to the National Assembly. On when the budget will be processed or passed, that will be a question for the National Assembly to answer. On the issue of the IGR, just like the federal government, the state governments are undertaking a lot of different types of efforts to increase internally generated revenue. Our revenues are very low compared to the size of the expenditure that we have. At the federal level, when you look year on year, when you look at our revenue generation year on year, it's increasing, but it is not increasing at the same rate as expenditure is increasing. So we have a very tight fiscal space. It's a very challenging problem when you have low revenues and you have very high expenditure that you must meet. Well, you must pay salaries, you must pay pensions, you must service your debt, and you're doing that from revenue or where the revenues are short, and this is continuously so now. You are borrowing to bridge the gap. And our budgets are designed to fund the deficit by borrowing anyway. So the state governments, some have done very well in terms of revenue generation. Some are still struggling to get a grip as to how best to mobilize resources. But we all must make sure that our tax collections improve.
Finance Minister, before we let you go, is Nigeria broke? A yes or no question? Is Nigeria broke?
Nigeria has a very, very...
Sir, we didn't hear that.
We didn't hear that.
Well, if we could...
All right.
Trying to see whether we can have the minister back, because that's...
No, we cannot. We cannot. Thank you so much.
Okay.
This is where we say thank you very much. Nwajiuba, Minister of State Education, for joining us, and Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed, of course, Finance, Budget and National Planning. Thank you so much for joining us.